Awesome. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Planning for Graduate and Professional School. I'm so excited to be kicking this off with you all. I've been meeting with students separately as well as they're hearing back from grad school and professional school and getting all these offers, but trying to look for funding, right? And I'm sure some of you have the biggest concern around funding, and so we'll dedicate some time to answer your concerns and questions around how undocumented students can pursue graduate and professional school regardless of their immigration status, regardless of not having work authorization. And I'm excited to also share my personal journey around that. Without having DACA, I pursued my master's in higher ed at Boston College. I did not plan it, but I am wearing a Boston College jacket to represent. My name is Sarah Kim. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the founder and CEO of Edu Light Inc. Edu Light Inc. is a career consulting firm that I have been running for now 2 years. I just celebrated my second year of running a business, and I've just been so grateful for the opportunities that have been open to me ever since I opened it. Um, I think in our previous workshops, we talked about entrepreneurship and independent contracting. But if you still have questions around that, feel free to reach out to me or even ask it in this workshop at the end. I'll leave my email. So if you have any questions, like follow-up questions, you could reach out to Nayeli or myself, and we will do our best to answer them. So don't let this workshop be the only place you kind of bring up the concerns about grad school or professional school. I encourage you to reach out and ask for resources and ask for questions. Before I share more about the workshop, I actually want to get to know you. Nayeli, can you hear me all right? Or am I pausing? Just double checking.
I can hear you.
Okay. So in the chat, I know some of you have actually shared your name, year, and major. So if you can share with me, this is a really fun activity. Where were you on this day last year? Feel free to take a look at your photos, your Instagram archives, and see where were you? What were you doing? Maybe were you studying for exams, like this year? And once you find that out, feel free to share in the chat. And I think this is just a cute activity to do to reflect on how far we've come every year. And so I kind of want you all to just see and pause, where were you last year during this time? And for some of you, maybe next year, you might be in grad school. So I think it's just a cool activity to do. All right, I'm gonna wait and see who finds out where they were last year first. So March 7th. If you don't have anything on that specific day, you could do it, look for anything around that month as well. All right. Maybe folks are having a hard time finding something, but I'll share first. Last year during this time, I made some soba noodle salad for a potluck dinner at my church. So I think that's pretty cool that I was cooking that day. If you still haven't found anything, feel free to take some time later today, to find out what you were up to this time last year. Ayeli, did you find anything?
Yeah, I did. I was just going through my camera roll and I found pictures of my cats. But I also found a picture
Oh,
of a family night that I hosted for our students that are part of the Dream.us. And that was pretty fun.
That is fun. Love that. And I see that some folks have found it um, at a little sister's open house, seeing her art projects. Someone was in their econ class. That's pretty cool. Oh, someone a picture of dissecting a sheep heart for their biology class. Interesting. You had to take the photo, right? Awesome. Thank you all for participating. Before we go into the workshop, let's go over some quick community guidelines. Just a reminder for you to take space, ask questions, your concerns, your thoughts, but also make space for others to share. Let's treat each other with respect and offer support as we're navigating, different journeys, different timelines. Let's keep our discussions confidential. So everything that is said here, shared by me or your peers, let's make sure that we don't share with others outside of this group. Let's share in first draft and early ideas. I know this is a webinar, but you can unmute yourself if you like to. So if you are thinking of something to share, even in the chat, I encourage you to not have to really process it and see if like one way is better than the other. So I just want you to comfortably share anything that is in your head and share those early ideas or questions with us. It's a safe space. All right. So I actually asked Nayeli um, for the feedback and the responses we got from you all about our upcoming workshops. And this is what some of your peers and colleagues have said. For the question, what do you hope to get out of the workshop? Students have shared that they want information and advice that can help them. They're planning to pursue their master's and they hope that this workshop will help. Someone said, I want to get a basic understanding of the opportunities that I can have going into graduate school as an undocumented student. So, probably the opportunities like graduate assistantships, research, and involvement to build your professional development, your resume, your portfolio, your experience. I think this person is highlighting that that's important for them. Someone is looking for scholarships and internship opportunities for grad school, career opportunities, and lastly, these are the questions that we received. What are ways that undocumented students can attend graduate school? What requirements are necessary to apply for grad school? How do you ask for letters of rec from professors? Any tips on finding internships for undocumented students? These are really great questions, and I'm so glad you all are here because I will address every topic and question. And if I don't address anything that you have a question in mind of, feel free to add it in the chat because these slides are just there to guide our conversation. And so I want to remind you all that this time is for you, and I'm here to, yeah, see what kind of questions you have around grad school and professional school. Nayeli, thank you for sharing in the chat the recordings of the two workshops. So for folks who didn't join or didn't know that was happening, feel free to join our first workshop recording. You could listen to it. I talk about navigating career pathways. The second one was on entrepreneurship. Today, we're going to have a quick overview of graduate and professional school, the difference between both of them, and um, how it looks. Factors to consider when applying to grad school or professional school. We're going to talk about what it means to even look at other states and other schools, private, public, state. I'll spend more time talking about funding strategies as this is the main concern and a huge barrier for a lot of our students, but especially undocumented students. We'll have an activity where I encourage you to brainstorm, and I'm sure you all have, considered what are the ways to fund grad school, and so we want you to share out. I'll end it with how you can prepare while you're in college. It's never too early to start thinking about grad school and professional school. And lastly, I'll leave you all with some resources and we'll have some time for Q&A. So as we begin, I'm going to ask you, what are your reasons for considering graduate and professional school? Feel free to get on your phone or your laptop and go on mentimeter.com, and the code is 17920591. I'm gonna quickly stop sharing my screen and I'll go into Mentimeter, but you'll be able to see which code I'm asking for. So just give me a quick second. All right. Are folks able to go on Mentimeter? Nayeli, were you able to get on there?
Yes, and I'll be
And
putting the link in the chat as
awesome.
well as the code.
Thank you so much. All right, so feel free to share what are your reasons for considering graduate and professional school. And really, there's no wrong answers. And you could be really truthful. I'll share as folks are typing. Um, I think I was considering graduate and professional school because I felt like that was the only option for me after college. Um, at that time, I didn't have DACA, although I was eligible. I didn't have DACA, and I just, I just didn't know what my options were, but more school. And so I kind of wanted safety and protection under being an education institution. And I also was still trying to figure out what I want to do with my career and what kind of careers I could even pursue, regardless of my status and regardless of not having DACA or work authorization. And so initially, my reason was because it felt like that was the only option. So folks have been sharing to solidify my experience, more opportunities, specialization for sure. When you go to a master's or a PhD or graduate professional school, you're getting specialized in an area, becoming competitive. So maybe more salary pay, you could increase pay, and you could also become a candidate that is more attractive because you are specialized and you have the background for it. Sending out in job apps, definitely. Let's see. So someone probably resonates with me saying it feels like the only option, right? Required for my career. So yeah, for some careers, you do need to go to grad school and professional school to provide certain services for your clients or to work in that industry. And so we'll talk more about like the requirements, um, part of certain jobs, we're gonna talk about licensure, um, but yeah, for some folks, it is required. All right. Thank you all so much for participating. So everyone has different reasons for pursuing grad school. Um, but I do want to say grad school and professional school is not for everyone. However, like regardless of immigration status, undocumented students have, and I see them going into really great colleges and universities and also finding ways to find support there, even if they don't have a designated career support center for undocumented students or undocumented student space, there are schools that can provide you the funding. And so I think I'm getting ahead of myself, but I just wanted to let you all know that this is a possible pathway. And I think personal for me, grad school opened a lot of doors for me. I started networking, and currently in my business, a lot of my networks and my clients come from people that I've met during grad school. And so, I didn't plan my future to be an entrepreneur, but it ended up really helping me to become an independent contractor and to be a business owner as well. So, just a quick refresher for a lot of you, but I wanted to share like the difference between grad school and professional school for folks who just don't know. So, grad school can be for a master's program, which can be just for a year or 2 years. And this was actually my concern. I didn't want to go to a program that's just 1 year because I knew that 1 year of school is going to fly by. And I felt like that's not going to give me enough time to build my resume and take advantage of the resources at the school or meet more people or yeah, just take advantage of that program. For other people, they want to go to a 1 year program because they just want to hurry up, get that degree, and work and get paid. But for me, I knew that I could benefit from staying longer. So these are some things that you can consider and think about as you decide which program fits you best. So take a look and consider also the timeline of how long it'll take you to get that degree. A doctoral degree is like a PhD degree. It could take from 4 years to 7 years, shorter or longer, depending on how fast you could, get your research, dissertation, thesis done. Grad school, you focus on academics, research-oriented programs, and typically they specialize in certain professional fields. The goal of grad school is to develop advanced knowledge and an expertise in a specific field. Some examples are sociology, art, engineering, computer science, education, etc. Professional school, we can also call them professional degrees, is what you get. It can take up from 1 to 5 years. The goal for professional school is to provide you with the practical skills and knowledge required for professional practice. Now, grad school and professional school, it can be very similar. It just really depends on the type of industry you're trying to go for. So the program that you're trying to go into, which school you're getting that program experience at. So it really differs. Often, professional school includes hands-on experience. For example, maybe you're required to have clinicals or residency, for example, when you go to med school. Often, it requires you to have or for you to get licensing for a specific occupation. Some examples of professional schools are in medicine, law, pharmacy, social work, counseling, and dentistry. Now let's talk about professional licensure. Um, in the chat, can folks just tell me what you know about professional licensure? Try not to read the slide, but tell me a little bit of what you know about professional licensure. Hmm, I probably spoiled it, right? What professional licensure is. Um, so let me throw out another pop quiz. You say true or false in the chat. Make sure you're sending it to everyone. True or false? In the state of California, um, actually, we should talk about Nevada. How about that? All right. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and go on this quick state quiz. All right. In the state of Nevada, can you obtain a occupational licensure um, for all professions regardless of your immigration status? True or false? Okay, someone says false, someone says true. Gonna wait for more folks to take a guess. So the answer is actually true. In the state of Nevada, um, policies currently allow individuals to obtain occupational licensure in all professions, regardless of their immigration status, which means that in the state of Nevada, you could actually use an ITIN number in replacement of a social security number to apply and get that occupational licensure. However, um, there might be other requirements that you can't meet because maybe some licensure requires you to have a certain amount of hours in clinicals or that work experience building hours. And if you don't have work authorization, it's much difficult to build those hours. And so that might be a challenge that you face. However, your immigration status would not be a barrier of obtaining an occupational licensure. Now, if you have questions around this, let me know. But in the next few slides, I'm actually going to be sharing with you a resource so that you can actually check if a state allows individuals to get occupational licensure regardless of status or not, because this is a state policy. So it really depends on the state that you're trying to get your licensure at. The reason why I bring it up in this workshop is because depending on the school that you want to go for grad school, you might want to end up staying there in that same state because maybe you build community and you build network. And so asking the question whether that state allows individuals to get licensure regardless of status is a great thing to look into before you move and settle down in that state. Because if you cannot get a licensure and you need that to practice or work in that industry or be an independent contractor or business owner, it's going to be hard to like make income. One participant said that was one of the reasons why I couldn't go for a hospitality degree here because of the experience hour requirement. Yeah, so that could be a challenge of you really getting the licensure. All right. So I did link a guide on state professional occupational licensure requirements for immigrants, and so feel free to check this out. But like I said, instead of a social security number, some accept ITINs as substitute. And for licensing boards, it really depends on the state whether they have immigration restrictions. Now, this is a list of professional licenses. I like to show this even in our workshops on entrepreneurship and independent contracting because we want folks to look at these licenses and these like different career fields and opportunities to see that, there are different options out there for you, different career pathway options. And you could take a look at this and see, can I be an independent contractor using my CPA like licensure? Maybe that might be of interest to you, or if you want to provide counseling, you could make sure and see that like which kind of professional licensure you would need and the requirements that you need to follow. And so before you apply for grad school, I think something you might want to factor in and do research around is professional licensure and see whether your career field requires that. So as I mentioned, I am going to introduce you to a really great tool. It's called the Higher Ed Immigration Portal.org. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and actually take you to that portal. They just revamped it, so there are more resources specifically for undocumented students. What I'm gonna first show you all is this tuition and financial aid equity for undocumented students map. And it's very interactive, so you could click on New York and other states and see whether they have in-state tuition and state financial aid, what it looks like for their state policy around professional and occupational licensure, and whether they provide undocumented residents with access to gaining a driver's license. So let me show you what the higher ed portal looks like. So I just put the link in the chat. So this is the higher ed immigration portal. You want to go into finding data and information on undocumented students. And right from the header, you can see that you could go to the portal to the states, which I just talked about. Um, you could go into like New York, learn more. And you could see this data around population. You could see that in the state of New York, um, students, if they're eligible, can get in-state tuition and state financial aid. However, in the state of New York, policies, it's limited to just DACA recipients or individuals who have work authorization to obtain an occupational licensure. The strategy that I share with students in New York is that take a look at a nearby state. So a nearby state of New York is actually New Jersey. So I currently reside in New Jersey, and New Jersey and New York, if you all visited, is connected by the George W. Bridge. And so if you live near the George W. Bridge, the commute is actually very simple and easy. And so I have students kind of think about whether they want to get their professional licensure in a nearby state and, provide service and work there. And of course, they have to see if that's possible, if housing or finding that commute is possible. But that is one strategy that you could think of, maybe moving to a state that is nearby to provide that kind of service and work. So there's always ways to work around um, policies that are limiting individuals from not obtaining occupational licensure. So I don't want you all to feel like, oh, in my state, we cannot, so I cannot pursue this degree. There are ways that you could strategize to move to a different state or a nearby state to make it possible. Going back to the higher ed portal, I also want to introduce you to let's see. There's a directory that I want to make sure you all learn about. I think I could find that separately. Directory. It's called the Community of Practice Directory. And the reason why I share this is because you can network with individuals who are in different states, in different schools, so that you could network with people and understand if they have any support and resources for undocumented students. So once I find that, I'll link it to you all as well. They also have a, let's say, private institutions tool. So you could learn more about the financial aid policies for undocumented students if you're interested in attending a private college or university. So that's pretty cool as well. Now they don't have like all the private institutions information on here. It's fairly new, but I would check it out if you're kind of interested in looking into private schools. All right. They also have the graduate portal. This is the hub that I actually really wanted to highlight with you all. So let me see if I can drop the link in the chat. So this is the Graduate and Professional Student Resource Hub. When you click apply, you'll see like general application guides that might be helpful for you. When you click on funding, they listed some scholarships and fellowships that you could look into and see if it's your eligibility criteria. And they're building onto this. And so I encourage you to check out the holistic resources, the institutional support, and research if you're interested. All right. Any questions so far? I'm gonna pause before we continue to talking about dual degree programs. Any questions?
I have a question, Sarah. So you had mentioned potentially going to or considering which state you go to for your graduate program, keeping in mind licensure requirements or opportunities. Um, I guess my question would be at that point, the student may also need to consider out-of-state tuition prices. Is that correct? Or international student prices?
Grad, yes. Grad school, they actually just provide like one pricing. So it, but if you're in the state that you qualify for in-state tuition, sometimes the state provides grants. Again, it depends on the state. So if your state gives state grant funding to undocumented students, and you qualify for that as a resident, then you might benefit from staying and going to state school. And so I do have students considering going to a state school so that they can benefit from having state funding. Um, Actually, my brother is going to a state school right now for his master's in art program. And I help him a little bit for his tuition, but the tuition cost isn't like too much. It's not like what I imagined it to be. And so I encourage you all to also look into the state schools. Nayeli, we have a question around UNLV. Does UNLV provide grants for graduate school for undocumented students? Would you be able to answer that?
I do not believe we have some specifically for undocumented students.
Mhm.
There are some grants provided by UNLV Grad School. I'm just not sure. I'm not entirely familiar with them, right? So I would be more than happy to connect with you to kind of talk a little bit more in detail about that. And I think what I usually encourage students to do though is like look for as many private scholarships because unfortunately we can't necessarily rely solely on the graduate program, especially considering everything happening at the federal level right now and kind of not knowing what's happening with certain grants. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nayeli. I would also say, um, never just rely on like grants or state grants, even if it's available. I would, and I'll talk more about this in the funding section, but some private schools or a lot of private schools have funding, but they're not marketing it because they don't want to share that information, but it also depends on the program that you're applying for. Some schools in that specific program might have more money than another program on the same campus. It really depends. And so that's why we encourage you to network and reach out to folks from these schools before you apply or while you're applying, to ask if there's funding available in that program that you're applying for. So I was able to find the Undocumented Community of Practice link. It's a directory of other educators who are undocumented allies. And so feel free to just reach out to them. I've actually used this in my first year of running this business to find clients and partners. And they're really happy to get in touch with students as well. That's why they're on the directory. And so you could say, "Hi, my name is so and so, and I found you on the Presence Alliance Undocumented Community of Practice. I'm currently looking to grad school, and I'm wondering if I can connect with you for 30 minutes to learn more about your campus." Um, and you don't have to disclose in the initial email. You could just see if you could connect with them. But anyone on that directory play a role in being an ally, an Undog ally, so you should feel more safe to disclose if you are comfortable to do so. But please keep the questions coming. Again, this is your time. All right, let's talk about dual degree programs. Has anyone heard this before? I'm sure some of you have. And is anyone considering dual degree programs or wants to? I bring this up because I did not know about dual degree programs until I got into my master's program. One of my mentors, and still my mentor today, um, she was a law professor, but she also worked in the education department at Boston College. And she would encourage me and say, "Sarah, do you want to be part of the dual program at Boston College? Do you want to get your JD at the same time with your master's so that you could maybe practice law using your JD degree afterwards? You could open up a law clinic or, provide services in that way." For me, I was considering it initially, but then later I was like, I don't think this is a good fit for me. But for any one of you, I encourage you to look up, dual degree programs and see if you want to combine a certain degree with another subject and join two areas of interest, and that could also expand your career opportunities. And so don't limit yourself from just getting one degree. Some folks like to get their, like, as you can see, their JD and their MA or their JD and their PhD. So I really encourage you to see if this is one area that you want to pursue, especially for folks who have so many interests. I know someone asked in the survey form that they want to learn more about what a grad school application requires. Now, it really varies, but typically a grad app requires you to submit your transcripts. Sometimes, and I see that they make this optional depending on the program and the school, but there are standardized test scores that um, some programs will require or make it optional. So there's the GRE. This is the really general one, and I've took this twice. And it's the graduate record examination. We also have the GMAT, but this is more for business programs. And it's the graduate admissions test. The LSAT is for law school admissions. MCAT is the medical college admissions test. And like I said, some graduate programs keep GRE exams as an option. And students have asked me before, "Sarah, should I submit my test score? If it's optional, should I submit it or not?" And my response is that if you feel confident about your score, submit it. But if you don't, maybe retake it again, or you could decide not to submit it. Um, Grad schools should look at your application holistically. And so without that score, maybe they'll take a look at your essays or your resume. And so don't feel like if you don't submit it, you won't get in. Typically, they will ask for 2 to 3 letter of recommendations. So it's very important for you to have more than 4 recommendations or recommenders like on your list because sometimes, you might want to apply for example, 5 schools or 7 schools, but it's going to be a big ask if you ask one professor to submit 7 recommendations, right? And so more recommenders you have on your list or on standby or who know you really well, I think that would set you up for success. And I'll kind of go more into the details of asking for recommendations. And lastly, you will typically submit a personal statement or a statement of purpose. I want to note that there is a identification document waiver when you are trying to apply to take these exams at specific testing centers. So for me, I was super worried once when I was taking my first GRE exam because they make sure that your legal name matches your identification and registration for this exam. I was super nervous because I think my legal name is Yejin, but I think for some reason I spaced it out. Jin space. And they're really picky about that. So just make sure that you're applying to take these tests and checking that your name is written correctly with the identification forms or documents that you have. I just wanted to note that, but like I said, sometimes you could ask for a waiver if you don't have the right documents to show for identification proof. Thank you, Nayeli, for putting in the chat that the Dream.us scholars can access free grad school tools, including GRE prep and discount vouchers. So students, I encourage you to check those out because the money could pile up real fast for those kind of tools. All right. For letter recommendations, first, you want to build a relationship with the recommender because enough for them to write you a really good one, they need to know you, right? So maybe you could have a professor write you one, maybe a supervisor, past supervisor. These individuals don't have to be current professors or current supervisors as well. So I encourage you to take some time and list out mentors in your life or people who have seen you work, your work ethic, your academic styles, and these individuals would be really great recommenders for your application. Number two, sometimes the application itself notes that they want a recommender who has the right qualifications and experience. And so this might mean having one supervisor, having a professor. And so it really depends on your application, but having a diverse group of individuals who can vouch for you academically, but also professionally will make your application very strong. The time frame of when you would want to ask for a letter of rec, um, I think at most like as I think the littlest time you should provide is 2 to 3 weeks. And I think that's still very short. What I've done is reaching out to individuals like months, like 3 months in advance, 4 months in advance, and then I would make sure that I am the one reminding them when it comes to the 3 week mark, the 2 week deadline, the 1 week deadline. I took the time to remind them because my professors, my supervisors have full-time jobs and they're busy and it might just slip through their mind and slip in their inbox and they forget about it. And then it's on us, right? If they don't write the letter rec because we didn't do enough reminding. So make sure that you're updating them, you're checking in with them so that they can submit it on time. I would provide the recommender some helpful information like your resume, your most updated one, a statement of purpose, and transcript. Typically, recommenders ask for those kind of materials. So you want to make sure these materials are all updated before you reach out. Communication is key during this process, so think about how you will keep informing them of any updates, reminding them, and letting them know if there's any changes in the process. Here's a real example of how I reached out to a professor for a letter of rec. Um, as you can see, I updated them on my postgrad life and I like let them know which school accepted me and the progress of that. Um, and so I tailored this email as much as I can. I was also very transparent of my ask. I asked them if they are willing to write me a letter rec. I also let them know of the programs that I'm applying to and also the deadline. Now, I'm not saying this is the perfect letter. Some folks like to reach out just to check in with the recommender first and make that connection and then make that ask. But this professor and I already had that relationship, and so I was more comfortable asking for a letter rec right away. So it really depends on how close you are to your recommender as well and the timing of it all. Nayeli, you wrote, the professor may also want to schedule meetings with you to get a full picture of what the program is and get details of your particular journey and academic background. Yeah, I agree. Some professors may want to just chat with you even longer. Some professors are like, okay, send me your resume and I'll just write it away. But some professors may have a different ask. So keep that in mind and be flexible. All right, I'm gonna take a pause and see if anyone has any questions about what we discussed. All right. The key takeaway for letter Rex is never wait last minute. This one is something you want to be very mindful of. All right, let's talk about factors to consider when applying for graduate and professional school. I think we started talking about this, but let's go into it further. Let me know in the chat. Are you open to the idea of attending graduate or professional school in a different state than Nevada? If so, where? And why? Gonna let folks answer that in the chat. And if you say no, feel free to also say no and kind of share your reasons why you wouldn't want to. Okay, we got someone hoping to go to California because they have lots of family there, and also the state is very immigrant friendly. Mm-hmm. That's great. It's really helpful when you have a family member or friends there in that specific state, so it'll be a much easier moving process. Anyone else? As folks write it in the chat, I'll kind of share. Um, so from that letter rec email, you'll see that I got into a program at USC. However, I couldn't accept it because of the cost. I advocated for myself. I reached out to some professors. They were super supportive, but the difficult thing was that it wasn't the professors' support that was lacking, it was leadership. So the people above professors, like the deans, they were not on board of figuring out ways to provide me funding or opportunities to pay for my tuition. And so for me, I had to take a gap year. I never imagined taking a gap year because I was like, what am I gonna do for a year? You know, I didn't have work authorization. During that time, I did volunteer at my church and I continued to stay active, but it was really difficult for me because I just had a whole year to figure out where I wanted to go, what kind of program. I just felt weird to dedicate so much time to thinking about the future without doing anything about it. But that gap year, I was able to look into different programs out of state. For example, in Massachusetts, I was looking in Boston because my cousin was there for school. Now, Boston at the time, or Massachusetts, did not have in-state tuition for undocumented students. Um, I think they just like passed driver's licenses for undocumented individuals. So a lot of these policies were not as advanced as other states. And they weren't just not known to be undocu-friendly. I just didn't know much about the communities there. However, the program that I wanted to apply to really fit with me, and I researched and looked into the program and found that professor who became my mentor. I really wanted to work with her. And so I think I'm so glad that I looked into a different state, and this was a private school because I also got into a public school, UCLA, my undergrad, and I had a lot of network and support. So in my head, I thought I would be able to receive funding from UCLA because I have the network, I know the people, it's in California. However, for master's programs, typically they just don't give you a lot of funding if funding is not available. So I negotiated, I talked, I disclosed, but UCLA, nothing was moving. But in Boston, I was able to talk to a professor. They would bring up my situation to another faculty member who was on leadership. And then that faculty member talked to the dean. And the dean talked to the financial aid dean. And then I was able to get my 2 years covered for my master's program. Now, I think like I thought this would not work out in Boston or Massachusetts because there's no Undocu allies like services or centers. However, I think I just talked to the right person for me to raise this concern and get the support that I need. And so sometimes like you would think that you would get a lot of support in one area, but for masters or your professional school, it looks different. And so the takeaway there is to have more options available for you to negotiate and to advocate and seek funding. For folks to put in the chat, someone said, not a different state because I feel it can be more expensive and I don't have family in a nearby state. Someone said, I'm planning on staying since I already have all my family and friends here, plus in-state tuition is cheaper. So these are all valid reasons. And I think with Real ID passing in May 7th, very soon, a lot of individuals, including myself, are um, cautious of traveling less since we won't be able to travel with just our driver's license without Real ID. So even that policy, that federal policy, is something that will factor into whether you want to move out of state or not. So first, location is an important factor. You want to make sure that the campus that you're going to attend isn't surrounded by US Border Patrol checkpoints because that would put you at risk. There are also states with anti-immigrant policies, so I encourage students to look look at any policies that are being created or being passed in that specific state. Traveling and transportation, like I noted, can you fly with your ID or your driver's license? That's a factor. And once Real ID is passed, do you feel safe passing through TSA? Um, Flying still is a risk, but I think personally for me, I'm gonna play it by ear and see how things look near May. But this is a real factor that makes things or harder for us. So some students will choose to drive and cross different states instead of flying because they want to lessen the risk. Funding sources will be a factor, whether a school can provide you with scholarship, grants, or loans. There are private schools out there that provide students with institutional loans that you could take out. And so I know a friend who went to Harvard Law and they were able to pay their tuition because Harvard also gave them private loans. We talked about professional licensing and other program requirements. This might be a reason why you choose to go to a certain school or pursue a specific program. I think for a lot of us here, this will be a factor as well. If you can gain the experiential learning opportunities, whether it's on campus or off campus, because you want to build your professional like resume and your skills. And so gaining experiential learning opportunities will definitely be a factor. For example, taking a look at the courses that the school provides, taking a look at the different types of fellowships that is aligned to your career interests, or to see if whether there are going to be research opportunities. Professors and mentors are factors as well. For example, if I didn't find this professor at Boston College, I don't think I would have pursued Boston College. I don't think I would have stayed there because I still need support and community and belonging. And I think that played a huge role. So I'm just so grateful that this one person became my support system, my undocumented student center. Um, but I think without that, it would have been really isolating and difficult for me to just pursue and finish my 2 years. Lastly, university support for undocumented students is really um, important. But like I said, sometimes it might just require you to find out one individual who could be your mentor and your support system. But this is one, thing that you can consider and look up whether a school has legal services for undocumented students and whether there are already existing resources, and that gives you the sign that this campus have been pushing and are in full support of undocumented students. So I shared with you all this Undocu Hub. So I encourage you to share this out with your friends and your peers as well. And yes, we went over these tools, this directory to network. It's never too early to network. So if you're even unsure about a program, I encourage you to still network with these individuals. All right, let's go into funding. I'm going to do a quick activity with you all where you first brainstorm ways to fund for graduate and professional school. What I want you to do is jot down all the ideas that you have to fund for grad school without judgment. So like don't think about whether it'll work or be successful. I just want you to jog it down. So go into the same Mentimeter and I'll change my screen and start jotting down your ideas. And these could be ideas that others have already done or already exist. Share my screen again. All right. I'll give you all 5 minutes. Or to get things running, I'm gonna give you all just 3 minutes. And so there's no wrong answers. I just want you all to jot things down. Feel free to put in the chat if you have any questions. Let me know if if you feel stuck. Let me know in the chat as well.
Here, I tried to put some responses, but it seems to say to wait for the presenter to change the slide.
Gotcha. Let me see if hold on. Does it let you respond now?
Yes.
Great. So keep the responses coming. Great. We got folks saying personal savings, private scholarships, grants, community fundraiser, savings from internships. Does anyone, whoever wrote this, do you want to expand? Community fundraiser. Feel free to expand.
That was
Nayeli,
me.
was it you?
Yes, that one was me. So I've
Love.
a couple of friends that I went to undergrad with, so I got my bachelor's degree with them. And they were trying to, figure out how to pay for grad school, and their family hosted like how do I explain it? In Spanish, we call it kermes, but it's basically where you go and they make food. They make a ton of food, and
Yeah.
you can go and buy from them. And it's usually like a whole day or a whole afternoon. And they got fancy and had like the option to pre-order and like pick up and even delivery. So they went all out and they had like food, drinks, desserts as a way to fundraise.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds so fun. Not just for the attendees, but I think like to kind of have that kind of like business model of like, hey, I'm gonna fundraise by selling food, drinks, and have fun. Like, come support me and be in community. I think that's a really great idea. Um, while you were sharing that, I'm recalling how my friend had another friend putting an event together where they were a bartender before, the person trying to go to grad school, and so they like rented out a bar and they had folks come in and they would make drinks for them, cocktails for them, mocktails for them, and all the money that their friends pitched in for went into their grad school program. And so there are fun ways to fund for grad school. I know that's a lot of event planning too, but I think some folks have used it as a goodbye party. If they're going to a different state, if they're gonna move like a few cities away, that's a way to celebrate and be in community at the same time and be supported by folks. All right. Any more ideas? Try to be creative with this one. And maybe even just highlighting the things that I've said, like talking to professors was one, networking, any other ways.
Think I have another suggestion, and it might be more so for students who have DACA work authorization. But for example, I'm a staff member at UNLV, and a benefit of that is that I'm able to get basically like a discount for grad school. I haven't taken advantage of that yet, but it's on the to-do list. But I know that that's an option for folks that are potentially like staff or faculty, well, more so staff at higher ed institutions.
Thank you, Nayeli. I think that's how some of my friends who I met in grad school also paid off for school because I think some staff members get it as tuition remission credits. Is that what UNLV also does?
I can't remember what we call it. It might be
Mm.
grant and aid, I think it is what we call it. Something along those lines, but where basically they pay for a certain amount of credits per semester.
Yeah. Yeah, so for some programs, or even at Boston College for my master's program, they had graduate assistantships. That's what the internships in grad school was called. And we went through the same interview process. You would have to get an offer from them. And some of these roles, came with a package of tuition remission, which is like you work and they pay for your credits and they also come with a stipend. For my case, I wasn't able to accept these offers because unfortunately at the time they said, yeah, they could pay for my tuition, like they could give me tuition remission, but it's attached to a stipend. And the stipend for that school and that at the time they said that for me to receive that stipend, I need to get on their payroll, which means I need work authorization. Now, I did try to educate them and say, hey, like, I'm okay with not getting the stipend and just getting the tuition remission because that would cover my, you know, my tuition. But they told me that, oh, that's not fair for you. So, but I was like, it's not fair that I'm not able to accept it at all then. And so that was the situation that I brought up to my professor, and I let them know that even though I get these offers, I can't accept these opportunities and ways to get paid. And so I didn't think it was fair, right? And luckily, the school was very supportive and believed in providing students the support and resources at that time. So I was able to get help. So thank you all for participating in the brainstorming session. I do want to let you all know other ways uh, um, that you might not have thought about, or maybe you did, um, but maybe you can consider more after today. So before we go into how to fundraise, you know, tuition and fees vary widely by the institution and the program type. Also, how long your program is will also change how much your program costs. Also, scholarship and grants and loans available may change even every year. At UCLA, the year before I applied for the same master's program, they had funding, but the funding ran out once I applied because like the grant was only set for a certain year. And so if you hear last year, like one school had funding, it might look different this year. And the only way that you learn about this is you networking with these individuals at the institution and finding out if there are grant available for the year that you're applying. For scholarships, I encourage you to inquire about eligibility or apply regardless of it having like a limitation on certain like eligibility criteria. For example, even if it says only for US citizens, instead of not applying, I would inquire, I would ask if you could still apply or if you would be eligible for a scholarship because some orgs, they just make it the standard requirement that someone needs to provide citizenship because they don't question um, if it's going to limit a lot of people from applying. So it's better to ask, and you don't even have to say and disclose that you're not a citizen. You could just say that you're asking for a friend. But I also encourage educators to do the same so students don't have to go out of their way to inquire and find out if they can still apply. There are merit versus need-based scholarships available depending on the school. And other places to look, I think, as Nayeli and I mentioned, are external and private scholarships. I invested in time during grad school as well and before to apply for these private scholarships from churches, from immigrant serving orgs, and other community orgs because they have scholarships like programs available throughout the year. What I didn't know about was that professional associations also offer scholarships for their students. And so professional associations are like orgs that bring together different professionals in the same industry. So I would encourage you to look into professional associations in your career industry. You could ask your professor, your supervisor, and ask if they're part of any. But as a student, you get a huge discount to be part of one. And sometimes they also have job boards. So with that job board, you could find opportunities for you to maybe work as a contractor or to apply if you have work authorization. Nayeli also dropped a link for the graduate funding page for UNLV, so I highly recommend that you check that out. Now, I know some of you and some of us use the word internship, but I encourage you to try to find opportunities that use the word fellowship because a lot of these institutions are actually using the word fellowship to make it more inclusive to undocumented students. Fellowships are not work opportunities, so they don't like require you to have work authorization. Not all of them, but most of them don't. Fellowships kind of provide you like a stipend and you provide a service sometimes, but some programs don't even require you to provide a service. So it really depends. But one example is UCLA Dream Summer Fellowship. This happens every year. This year it's going to be remote. So you don't have to be a UCLA student. You also don't have to be at UCLA to be part of this fellowship. The only requirement that I remember right now is that you do need an ITIN to be eligible for this. Feel free to check UCLA Dream Summer out. It's really cool because I also work with a nonprofit, First Gen Empower, and we bring in students who are part of this fellowship to volunteer with us for 7 weeks. Thank you, Nayeli, for dropping the link down. I started talking about tuition remission. Now, tuition remission is institutional aid. Some institutions provide this with the graduate assistantship. It would be really cool to see a fellowship that provides tuition remission. But what tuition remission does, as you know, like I was saying, it provides you with the credits to pay for your tuition. And so one of the strategies that I took to fund for grad school and professional school was asking if I can receive tuition remission instead of a stipend. And unfortunately, I couldn't really negotiate with that, or they weren't on board with that. But I think that kind of conversation would have continued if I didn't receive a full ride. There are non-service stipends out there, so like fellowships, but without the service that you need to provide, and typically those also don't require a social security number. I was surprised that no one brought up like GoFundMe types of fundraising. Um, for me personally, I didn't want to open up a GoFundMe. I didn't want to be public about my situation or ask for money. It's even hard for me to ask for help. So how can I ask for money, right? But I had this conversation with one of my friends, and they said that I can decide to make it more private. I could send emails with like a link for folks to support me. I could write personalized letters to family and close friends and allies. And what reminds me of personalized letters for support are letters that I received from my friends who would go on church missions. And we would help my friends go on these church missions by fundraising with them or just pitching in for their flight and their trip. And so, in a similar way, I could have, written a letter and say, "Hey, I'm going to grad school. Would you like to support me?" If you're comfortable, you could also be public about it, post on social media and LinkedIn. It's really up to your comfort level. There are also private loans. Now, this limits to folks who don't have DACA, as there's, with private loans, we might feel wary about it. We might think that we need a cosigner, but if it's through the institution, it would be a more viable or open option for you. Luckily for me, I didn't have to take out loans, but if you're, non-DACA status, I think asking the institution if they have institutional loans that you could take out is a conversation that you could have. I've just dropped in or screenshotted some scholarship opportunities and a fellowship opportunity that I found on the internet. Um, and so Undocumented Professionals has a job resource board. But I want to make sure the link works because this week I tried Undocumented Professionals and their website was not working. So Nayeli, let me know if it's not working right now, right? Yeah, so I'm not sure why, but hopefully the website is up and running again. They have a job board, and you could take a look at the different fellowships, contracting jobs that they post out there. Even if it's outdated and an org posts about a fellowship opportunity, I would reach out to that org because once an org, posts those kind of opportunities that are inclusive to undocumented students, it's more likely that they will be creating those kind of opportunities in the future. And so I would network with these orgs that create these opportunities. Thank you, Nayeli. Yeah, follow them, follow Undocumented Professionals on Instagram as they provide live updates on policies as well. So, with funding, we actually encourage you to negotiate for financial offers. Um, so what that means is that you are strategic of who you talk to and what you share, and you be a very active advocate for yourself while trying to find that ally. And, as I shared about my personal journey, I networked and I asked about the departmental funding, and I knew that every year it looks different. And so I reached out. I started with one connection and I asked if they knew another connection. And so I really used the warm connections that I was developing. And in those conversations, I don't go and say, "Hey, I need funding. Can you give me funding?" That is not the first kind of conversation that I have with them. I share with them that I really want to attend that program, that school. And I even share if I receive other school offers. Um, but I kind of like reshare my interest is attending their school. And then I shared my achievements, for example, how I worked in the Undocumented Student Program at UCLA, and that's actually why I wanted to pursue my master's in higher ed. And my long-term goal is to find ways to better support undocumented students. And so I shared that. overview because I wanted them to understand why I wanted to get into this program. If you feel comfortable, you could also share about your financial circumstance. So this could start in the initial email or the initial outreach, initial meeting, or it could start later on. And so really when students get to this negotiating part of the process, it's typically after they get accepted to a college for grad school or professional school. And now, once they get accepted, they only have like a month or two to decide if they want to commit. And so time becomes very sensitive. And so that's why I'm sharing with you that it's okay to initially share all this information in an email. I've had students negotiate by sharing. They would get like 20% of a financial aid package and then it bumps up to a 30% to a 40%. So the process might take a while. And so really with your comfort level and, if time is limited, it's okay to share, more information through email. But be mindful that if you're emailing someone, they just never have met you and they don't know you. And so sometimes a shorter email just to get on a call might be more effective than a really long email, kind of sharing about your journey and your circumstance. But I'm here to say there's no right and wrong way. I have students that I supervise and mentor that have sent a long email, but they were able to get that financial aid package push. And so I'm seeing that there's different ways to go around it. But consider what you feel more comfortable and confident about doing. Because at the end of the day, it is your action step. But don't do nothing about it, right? Be the initiator. Don't wait for anyone to come to you. I'm gonna give folks a quick minute or two to read my initial email to connect with a professor on my situation. It's not perfect, um, but it allowed me to connect with them. So feel free to take a quick look. Now, reading my email, let me know what stood out to you. And if anything stood out to you, kind of tell me why that stood out to you. Would you want to write a similar email? Would you go about it a different way? Let me know in the chat what you're thinking after reading the email. So, quick note, this individual that I reached out to, I have never met in person. Um, like you can read in the email, I found or learn more about them because I looked them up and I learned that they conducted research on individuals who hold DACA status. That gave me the information that, okay, they did research, they know about the undocumented community. And that gave me the green light to feel comfortable sharing about my status. Yes, I brought forward the issue at hand, and I was straightforward, and I also provided the specifics. I chose to do that because I was in a very time-sensitive spot. I had to decide and figure out if I can get funding for this institution versus another institution. And so I wanted to be as straightforward about my circumstance and my situation. Here's a scholarship letter that offered me full tuition remission credits. So this is how I got my tuition covered for 2 years for my master's. As you can see, it's coming from the dean, um, from the school that I applied to. They also called it tuition remission credits. I was offered the scholarship based on my outstanding academic qualifications, promise of leadership, and commitment to just social justice. I'm not sure about the academic qualifications, um, but I'm confident that they know about my social justice commitment because of what I shared, right? Um, and so they wouldn't have known that I'm committed to social justice if I didn't let them know of why I want to pursue this degree at their program. And so I think that's why it's important to share with them your long-term goals or the reasons why you want to be going to their program. Any questions about negotiating financial offers? Thank you. I feel like more than the hustle, I felt like so much urgency. And I think, as I shared in the beginning, grad school felt like the only option. So I think I was working under pressure. But through this experience, I learned about what it looks like to advocate and be confident of pursuing higher ed. I think this process made me so excited for the program, but it also gave me information that, oh, this college, this program is here to also support me in my journey. And so last year, I went back to my grad school. They invited me to talk and give a mini training around supporting undocumented students. So I actually got paid for that as well. So that was pretty cool, and that I was able to give back to the school that um, prepped me and equipped me to do the work that I'm doing today. And so think the most big takeaway is that I developed a relationship with the school, and I know there's a lot of work to do there as well, but I'm so glad that they are open to it and that they're trying and they're bringing me back to help them get there. All right, with the last, oh wow, okay, time flew. So I'm gonna wrap it up here with you all with some resources. You're gonna have access to them and the slides. And so I'm just gonna quickly go over what these resources are. We have resources specifically by career interest and field. I also have placed resume, cover letter, professional portfolio resources for anyone that needs to update their resume before they send it to their recommender. I also have some professional development and job search resources. Specific graduate and professional school resources are here as well. And if you want to learn more about occupational licensure or even about business and tax resources, I've listed that here. But if you find any resources, if you don't find any resources that you're looking for, feel free to reach out to me or Nayeli. And here's the QR code for the slides and a bit.ly link. But thank you all so much for joining me on a Friday. I really hope that you enjoy your weekend, whether you're studying or not. But yeah, thank you all so much.
Thank you, Sarah. We do apologize. The time really did fly by, so we weren't able to open up for any questions. But Sarah is awesome in that she has provided you all with her email, and she also has a lot of great resources on the slides and in her website. So definitely check those out. You're also welcome to reach out to me as well. I will put my email in the chat if you want an individual appointment to talk a little bit more in detail about your particular situation. Again, my name is Nayeli Rico Lopez. I'm the coordinator for the UNLV Undocumented Student Program. So I'm happy to connect with any of you. But thank you, Sarah, so much. I will work on uploading this recording, which I will stop recording now. I will, let's see.